Hello again, guys. It is I, Freeze700. We are back, this time with lightsaber form number 7, the Juyo, also known as Vaapad. Although Vaapad is actually a technique, a specific form of Juyo. So, let's cover the two. Let's see what it is about this form that makes the Jedi so notoriously dangerous when they use it. What about the lightsaber form speaks about the user in general? We're going to cover that right now. So Juyo is a form that was actually created from the rejected ideas of the Shi-Cho. So the techniques of the Shi-Cho form are more universal. They're both offense and defense. It's a very, really unfallible form. There's no way you can ever fail with the Shi-Cho. Well, some techniques that were used in the Shi-Cho that were rejected were turned into the Juyo, and these techniques would be highly aggressive techniques. This involves a lot of spinning, a lot of thrusting, a lot of just swinging your sword like fucking crazy. This would be the Juyo. Of course, this would be a form that's more for an aggressive stance, not per se a defensive stance. So right off the bat, the Jedi just don't like it. Now, not only did they not like it, but they also forbidden it, because of the fact that when you're swinging this wildly, you draw upon the Force to enhance your blows. But the issue with drawing upon the Force is that if you're a Force sensitive, you're going to be slightly influenced by what's going on. And what usually happens is people use their anger to help them energize their swings, to prolong this engagement, and also to give their swings the necessary oomph that it needs to cut through somebody. This, of course, is a problem because anger is not one of the founding tenets of the Jedi Order. They're one of the founding tenets to the Sith Order. So what happens here is that a lot of Jedi will fall to the Sith teachings because, after all, they already fight like Sith. May as well start worshipping them, right? Well, this is where the Sith would use the Juyo form the most. But even then, not all Sith Lords use the Juyo because, as I've stated, it's a very aggressive technique. A lot of spinning, a lot of whacking. It's just not that decent of a form because your defense is going to be rather lacking. The best way to really use this form is if you're fighting an opponent who's using a very defensive stance, like the Sorosu stance. If you're fighting someone who's fighting highly defensively, you need to just keep whacking and whacking and whacking away to hack at their defenses and find an opening. This is a perfect form for that. And this is where I would say the Juyo was really necessary for the Sith because the whole way that the Jedi fight is by defending. Very rarely do Jedi attack. Most of the time they're defend. So when you're fighting someone like that, the best way to do is to have a very good offense. An offense to pierce their defense. Now, I've shown some diagrams here. This is one such way that you could do it. One such way that we see with Darth Maul in particular is sometimes he'll turn off his double-bladed lightsaber so only one side is ignited. This, of course, if you keep hacking away in a prolonged fight, your opponent is going to forget that you have a second blade. Qui-Gon Jinn fell to this when Darth Maul whipped around and ignited it into his stomach. This is a very aggressive stance and a very interesting form indeed. But let's say you don't have a double-bladed lightsaber. There's another image down here, right below, that shows a guy using a two individual blades, and he's just hacking away at this Jedi to the point that the Jedi has left himself defenseless for one spin maneuver that will just cleave him into many pieces. Again, this is the Juyo. You want to just get in there, close on the fight, and just keep hacking away at somebody until their defenses falter. Again, if someone's a master of defense, you're going to be there for a long time hacking away at them. And as a Jedi, this is not really a really good stance to be using if your whole creed and tenets is about peace and keeping up the love and tranquility and defending oneself, not attacking. Yeah, you're not going to be really doing too good if you're using this form. Now, the next form of Juyo is known as Vaapad. Now, Vaapad is actually a name from a creature that exists on a little planet. And the Vaapad is a really interesting species because it has a lot of tentacles. So what it does is it lashes out its prey from multiple directions and just overwhelms them in a blink of an eye with these tentacles. The Vaapad is Mace Windu's form of Juyo, and he has perfected it into a form that can actually be used by the Jedi. But even then, he does restrict on who it's taught to, because it's very reckless. So even though now he's made it where you're not that easily susceptible to give in to the onslaught of blows and just become anger-filled and hateful, there's still a risk that your emotions could get the better of you. So it's best to leave this form to people who he is personally deemed capable of learning it. That's right, this lightsaber form is still forbidden in the Jedi Order, technically, but Mace Windu has found a little leeway to use it. Now, the way Mace Windu uses it, I find very fascinating, because you would almost say it's not Juyo, but it is. It's still highly aggressive. Very rarely does Mace Windu actually block shots. Most of the time, he charges at opponents and hacks away at them with his hand extended out in front of him. Now, the reason why this is very interesting is that when we see other forms like the diplomat form, the Nimin is all about the Force and using the Force with your lightsaber skills. This means that usually you're going to have one hand on the blade, one hand off, because you're using stuff like flicking crates at an enemy or just pushing enemies aside with Force push. The Vaapad form is very different in the sense that Mace Windu's got his body open. But the reason why he's got his body open is not because he's using the Force. The reason why his body is open is because he's making you feel like he is defenseless. That way, when you charge at him, he's going to cleave you into two. We see this tons of times where he's fighting, as I've shown here. This is a great capture of Episode 3, where Palpatine, or Emperor Sidious, whichever name you prefer, has his lightsaber geared towards Mace Windu's chest. And if you rewatch the scene, you will see that Sidious keeps going for Mace Windu's chest, but every time he does, Mace Windu just blocks his blade and proceeds to try to cleave him in the head. Every fucking time Sidious lunges at Mace Windu, you're going to see this over and over again, where Mace Windu's got his body open, but reality is, that's not an opening. That's a bait. That is him baiting his opponent to come at him. But when his opponent comes at him, he better get ready for when that opening closes and the saber comes swinging hard at someone's head. We saw this against Jango Fett in Episode 2, where he kept blocking one or two blaster shots, but then proceeded to just cleave his head off completely. So again, this lightsaber form is not exactly meant to take prisoners, but on the flip side, he has made it into a form where you can stick your leg out, and the moment your opponent tries to cut your leg off, you just simply pull your leg back and swing at his hand, disarming him and then proceeding to hack him into pieces. This is the whole point of the Vaapad, is that you're still aggressive, but your aggression can be used in the opponent's favor. You're instead making it where your opponent gets aggressive. This is the point of Vaapad. So you're still aggressive, but this time it's both parties. You're telling the enemy, hey, my hand is out in front of me. You could probably cut off my hand right now. Oh, psych, not really. That was just a bait. And then you slice him up in pieces. This is why I like the Vaapad form a lot more. It's more interesting. It's more intricate. It's more tricky. Essentially what you're doing is you're forcing your opponent to be as aggressive as you. But the reason why they're so aggressive as you is totally different. You're being aggressive because that's your form. You're trying to just hack him into pieces. He's being aggressive because he thinks he sees openings. He thinks you're being careless. He thinks that you just left your arm completely out in the open to get cleaved off. Reality is, the whole point of a pod is that when he goes for your arm, you just pull it back and you whack him a good 6 times, and one of those hits might actually go through and kill him. So the Juyo form is very fascinating. As far as like all the other lightsaber forms go, I would say this is the most interesting, mostly because it's got 2 techniques that are almost the same, but at the same time they're really not. One's more for Sith, one's more for Jedi. Both can be used by either side, but there's a lot of risk in using this kind of form because you're going to give into your emotions when you're swinging this aggressively. So besides that, this has been Freezer 700. I am out. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Besides that, next video is going to be uploaded later today, and it's going to be some more interesting content. See you guys next time.